Greetings, I'm John the Spirit. Man, wood is hard and not in the fun way, and welcome to Pyanodon Recap Supershorts. We knew we were going to need a lot of wood in order to do Pi 2 science. The wood we made wasn't nearly enough, but it was a start, and we're going to copy the build, but let me show you what it is. This build makes excess wood output of about 14 per second, but it also uses wood for a lot of helpful things along the way. These 12 fastwood forest trees accept tree seedlings, carbon dioxide, and an awful lot of muddy sludge. Like 300 muddy sludge per second, which is way more than the moss uses, and is equivalent to, actually 12 washers. So it's a washer making muddy sludge to every fastwood forestry right here, which is pretty terrible. We'll talk more about why it was terrible in a bit. We did a cute little tiling system, I guess. The botanical nurseries give tree seedlings to the fastwood forest trees. We pass the moss underneath and the tree seedlings up top, and they combine together. The build tiles every 4 fastwood forest trees with this funny little bump in the middle, while the wood from the fastwood forest trees comes in on the middle. The logs are processed into wood here at 5 wood processing units, but the issue is that 3 wood processing units make 15 wood on their own. We only need slightly over 4 wood processing units. But anyway, these first 3 fill up a belt of 15 wood per second, and eventually, when the logs back up, they got messed up because something in our stone system got messed up. When the logs back up, they'll go into these wood processing units, and we'll have like a belt and a third of wood. You'll notice that at present, none of the wood is going down to the actual wood output. It's actually popping up into these splitters and then going upward toward these destructive distillation columns. These destructive distillation columns are made to be able to handle the full output of these 4.2 wood processing units, and they turn wood into coal and then that coal into coke. The coal gas is not something we find incredibly important, so we slap it in a pie tank and then throw it away. Actually, I should remind myself to put down a pump instead of an overflow valve, because this pie tank will never be enough for a cybernetic combinator. Not that we ever actually put a cybernetic combinator on here, so this coal gas is not even being provided to the network, but whatever, okay, I guess. Anyway, the real purpose of all this is to get the tar. All of the tar is being shoved into these 3 tar processing units, and the main goal of that tar is to get the pitch. Why do you think we want the pitch? As it turns out, pitch makes more stone bricks from stone. Instead of turning 5 stone into 2.5 stone bricks, we get an extra 1.5 stone bricks. And since you can crush those stone bricks back into stone, we send pitch in, we turn the stone into stone bricks with pitch, and then we crush it again, and we put it in a loop until we have an excess of stone. This practice consumes about 6 of our wood per second in order to feed the 20 wood per second we're making, so we're left with about 13.4 wood per second. So it's not terrible. I mean, it is basically a third of our entire wood production, but it means we don't have to supply stone, and goddamn, stone is in the shortest supply possible. All that stone is for 5 million moss farms. Meanwhile, we need to feed a lot of muddy sludge, so we extract the contents of 15 soil extractors, which is 2 full yellow belts worth of soil, and feed it on either side to these 12 washers. Which is weird, because I think we actually need 13, so is this the wrong amount? Is the moss not— I mean, the moss appears to be running fast. Everyone's running. I don't know. Sometimes numbers are fucked up, and I don't know why. There's one more component to the loop that wood is used for. Wood is used to make these tree seeds, and the tree seeds come into this botanical nursery to make tree seedlings. Well, they come into all of these botanical nurseries. It's a pretty basic loop. I find it more tedious every time I do it. And that is why the Pi devs are trying to make it better. And I'm sure they will soon, and then we will make a better wood farm. And hopefully they don't ruin all of our existing wood farms, but it's probably going to happen. Anyway, there's a few fun other Easter eggs to this build. Most of the extra fluid outputs from tar processing go right over to these oil burners to be turned into extra steam, with a little bit of help from this electric boiler. But the extra creosote goes straight to tar processing units, where it makes us some treated wood, which we then export to anywhere that needs it. Which is good, because we're going to need it for our mall eventually, when we make the mall 5 million hours from now. Anyway, the amazing 12 extra coke we get can sometimes be picked up by trains, but is mostly turned into lots and lots of acetylene, using a setup pretty much identical to the setup that we used for our lead patch way back in the day. So I just copy-pasted that because I have no chill. More accurately, I was tired of this build. It too much work. So we have another fun, spicy little source of acetylene whenever wood is being used at full speed, and there will become a time when it is definitely being used at full speed. Now you may be wondering, Jonathan, what is this random tailings input that you have here? What is this petri dish input, this planter box input that you have here? First of all, I want you to know that I had planned to make these about 60 hours ago, and only like literally in the last 10 hours or so did I actually make these. So this tree farm was made a very long time ago, and I only recently added these. Why did I add them? I added them because I wanted to breed Tree Seeds Mark II, something which has gloriously finally happened. Actually, wow, that means we're done breeding Tree Seeds Mark II forever, but whatever, anyway. The tree seed breeding program used moss gene samples, trees, and tailings to make tree seeds. This extra botanical nursery was sitting here so that we could make tree seedlings, and in order to make tree seedlings into trees, we needed planter boxes. But planter boxes required too much random stuff to be able to make in the wood farm, so we said, we'll make this breeding program when we have planter boxes set up somewhere else in the base. 60 hours later, we made the automation science pack system and exported extra planter boxes from it so that we could use them for our trees. And then for these moss gene samples, we of course also needed petri dishes. And those petri dishes also took 60 hours to make. But finally, we were able to continually breed for Tree Seeds Mark II until we got them. And we only need one to start the loop, a loop which requires us to supply ground samples, I guess more planter boxes, which we already have, and that's it. So we just need to slap ground samples down somewhere here, and we'll be able to get our Tree Mark II modules. How exciting! I'll have to tell Arch, because I think we didn't realize that this was finished, but we just started it like 10 hours ago, so very exciting. These Mark II modules, in general, provide us with extra speed. That reduces the size of your builds, which ultimately results in a reduction in UPS hit from your builds. I'm personally on a team that says, hey, can we have productivity from these modules too? That'd be so cool, neat, and fun, and make it more worth it. But I'm also on the team that says breeding these modules is generally just interesting. Like, breeding Tree Seeds Mark III will require anthracene oil, I guess, which is kind of neat. And cDNA. And you'll need chelators eventually to make more tree seedlings. And then later you use peptidase M50, I don't know, it's fun. Like, this is... Breeding requires you to have small amounts of random stuff that you otherwise wouldn't make, which we'll see later when I talk about Seaweed Mark II. So Arch and I personally really enjoy it. Some people don't consider it worth the time, but Arch and I have made a point of trying to enjoy all of the cool features in this mod, even if they eventually become obsolete, like the caravans that we no longer use. Anyway, now that we're done with trees, I seem to have found myself with extra time in which I can talk about another build. However, the glass build, the next thing I want to talk about, is very large. So I think I'll take this time to do a little bit of a bonus round and talk about the very, very cool aerial turbines. Aerial turbines are a new method of passive power production. On their own, each individual aerial turbine makes about 6 megawatts on average. But there are ways to drastically increase this amount of power. Let's click on one of these cute little aerial turbines and see what he says. When aerial turbines generate power, they do so by filling up a little bit of an accumulator. This accumulator fills up, but we also see a lifetime energy generated stat that tells us how much energy would have been generated if the aerial turbine had space to put it. When aerial turbines do their thing and generate power, they travel back and forth inside an electric network. Which electric network they travel back and forth in, however, can be controlled using a power switch. We have one of them right here, connecting, separating the entire rest of the power in the base from the power system specifically dedicated to aerial turbines. But why would we want to have a power system specifically dedicated to aerial turbines? I wonder if you can guess where this very long set of power poles goes. If you were to follow this set of power poles very far up, you would make it to our geothermal plant, where you'll notice that there is a collection of many, many power poles densely populated. Aerial turbines generate more power the longer their flight path. And by flight path, I mean their path flying from one power pole to another power pole on the same network. How do they choose which power pole to fly to on any given path? They choose the power pole that's farthest from them. Okay, let's be a little more accurate. The aerial turbines have the goal of reaching every single power pole in the network using the longest path possible. So they'll try and take fairly long paths. They'll never visit a power pole twice while they complete their circuit of every power pole, but they'll try and do it in a way that makes them take a really, really long time to visit every power pole. So they attempt to take the longest paths possible. Every time they bounce off a power pole, they slow down, and so their efficiency resets. But the longer they travel, the more speed they pick up lore-wise. So it's not literal speed, but their rotor speed, their spinning around increases. And so this stat called effectivity rises and rises over time as it goes on its long path. And as effectivity increases, the amount of power they generate increases. So obviously, the optimization problem of aerial turbines is if you can make a power pole network that causes aerial turbines to be as effective as they can most of the time. That means they've got to take really long paths. Each aerial turbine being in a network requires there to be 3 free power poles in the network. By that we mean, like, for every 3 power poles in a network, you can fit another aerial turbine in that network. Right now, we're at 94.3% airspace traffic flow because we put a lot of aerial turbines early on. You should know that aerial turbines are very expensive. You should also know that we made like 60 aerial turbines just before the update came that made them really expensive. So we do plan to make them again though, but right now we have about 60. But there are many ways to optimize for aerial turbines picking the longest path possible. And I'm not going to explain exactly why we chose the method that we did. But if anyone can explain it in the comments, you get a prize. I don't think you get a prize, but the prize you would get is being able to have super extra efficient aerial turbine generation. I'm sure there are lots of ways to use this clever optimization problem to find a way to make the aerial turbine's paths as long as possible, as often as possible, but this was our solution. Many power poles at the top of a long line, many power poles at the bottom of a long line. Now you may be thinking, Jonathan, are these aerial turbines really useful as active power generation, considering that they're just accumulators and they'll only work when your base is on the verge of brownout? And you would be correct, but not quite, because that is another fun problem to play with. It's not a problem we finished solving yet, but if you want to use aerial turbines as active power generation, you need to make sure all your other power generators turn off until they're necessary. Then the accumulators will start discharging, and when the accumulators become insufficient, then all your other power generators should be made to kick in. So we're planning to use power switches, accumulators, and some combinator network stuff, so that we can heavily prioritize aerial turbines making power and then run all of our other power plants when those aerial turbines are insufficient. The funny thing is, though, the accumulators we need to make this system work require, 30 batteries, but aerial turbines also require, like, 100 batteries. So when we made our 60 aerial turbines, we actually completely depleted our base of batteries and then died instantly, because we were not making enough on the bus to make these batteries run at any reasonable speed. Also, where is Zinc? What happened to Zinc? Why did Zinc die? Hello? Did we turn a belt? Goddamn. But yeah, aerial turbines are being sad boys right now because we don't have the batteries for them. We do now have lots of batteries, but we do not want to exhaust our base. So what we're going to do to stress test our train base is to make aerial turbines in the train base once we have everything we need for them, and then just see how many we can make, because if you can make them at a reasonable speed, they're just a steady addition of power to your base, and that's what we want. Aerial turbines can be automatically deployed into your base using an aerial base, and we'll talk about that later. I'm going to cry. Anyway, I'm not going to tell you about this right now. Arch and I had fun on stream when we were testing this. It was one of our first streams, actually, and Nana Melon, who designed the system, was here to gush over their aerial turbines. And we gushed about them too, because they seem so fun, and we want to keep doing them. They're just so goddamn expensive. For now, however, that's it for today's episode. In the next episode, we'll talk about my glass build, which, if you were watching in episode 3, you'll remember I said that eventually I would talk about a glass build, and some funny stuff happened. Oh, that's going to be a doozy of an episode. Anyway, I'll see you then. As always, if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. I hope you enjoyed.